Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. Some backstory. My mom was a traditional helicopter mom growing up, and even though I'm almost 30, continues to struggle with control issues and not having as much of a say in my life as she used to, and struggles that she is not my go-to person anymore. 6 years ago, me and my wife got together, and once it became serious, I started to put our relationship as a priority. My mom expressed disdain for my wife and for the attention being on my wife and not her. Gets upset that I use vacation time to spend with my wife rather than for family vacations. Would constantly complain that I don't visit home enough, etc. It's been very difficult for my wife throughout our relationship to feel like my parents don't approve of her or our relationship. When I told my parents I was going to propose, they tried to sabotage it and told me I was too young. When we bought our first house, they told me we were making a mistake. When we made the decision to move to another state, we were met with a lot of guilt for abandoning the family, and in general, we have not gotten a lot of support from my family, specifically my mom, when making big decisions. Me and my wife found out she's pregnant a couple months ago and decided to wait until she was 12 weeks along to tell family and friends. We told her parents first, and that took a lot out of her. They reacted well, but it was emotionally exhausting, and she had a rough first trimester, so she didn't have a lot of energy in general. We were obviously planning on telling my family shortly after, and my wife expressed concern about their lack of support for big life decisions, and said she didn't know if she had it in her to be a part of telling my parents. She also doesn't like being the center of attention, so being pregnant has been difficult in that sense as well. After talking about for a bit, I decided to do a family FaceTime call with my parents and siblings to tell them the good news. They reacted fine but weren't as excited as my wife's parents. My wife was napping when I told them. Now, my mom is telling me she's upset that we didn't tell them in person and that my wife wasn't a part of the conversation. I explained that my wife was having a rough time and felt uncomfortable with that, so I was going to do whatever made her the most comfortable. She is my priority. My mom is insisting that her own needs are just as important in this scenario, and that I should have been more considerate and should have known it would upset her to hear the news over FaceTime. She also insinuated that my wife steamrolled me in this scenario, and I shouldn't just defer to her when making decisions. I tried to explain that my wife asking this of me was not steamrolling me, and that I made the decision to do this based on her comfort. Am I the a-hole for putting my wife's concerns, comfort over my mom's feelings? Not the a-hole. Your mother doesn't have any needs when it comes to your wife's pregnancy. She has wants, and she needs to grow the F up and realize it's time for her to be nothing more than a spectator in your life now. That's what parenting is. Eventually, you're just a spectator. Not just this, but OP, you need to realize that nothing less than complete capitulation will ever satisfy your mom. Since she won't ever blame you because that would just drive you away, she's going to blame your wife. You should be trying to shield her from that as much as possible, and it's obvious you're trying. It's also obvious that it isn't working. The only way to get your mom to change is to institute some hard and harsh boundaries that you stick to. She starts with insults, end the call, leave the dinner gathering, and if it's bad enough, skip the next gathering. Not the a-hole. Finally, a husband who sticks up for his wife. I love it. Your mother screwed herself out of an in-person meeting. If she hadn't been so childish and been a needy, controlling mother, she would have gotten a better announcement. She's upset that your wife is your priority, and rightly so she should be. You have chosen to create a life with your wife, and your mother needs to suck it up. It's not about her, and she needs to grow up. I firmly believe that when you choose to get married, your spouse takes priority, and your parents need to realize that. It's life. I'm certain your mother would not want her mother-in-law butting in every step of the way. You're doing a great job. Support your wife and keep the negative vibes, aka your mother, away from her. Not the a-hole. How do you let your mother get the words? My needs are just as important in this scenario, without immediately saying, no, your needs concerning the pregnancy of my wife are not equally as important as the needs of the future mother of my children. But I do think you're secretly a bit of the a-hole for not putting your foot down with your parents more and letting your wife take the blame for steamrolling you. How hard is it to say, no, this is my and only my decision. I don't like the way you treat my wife, and if you want to be a part of your grandkid's life, you will learn to respect her. Your mother is an abuser and gaslighter. Set clear boundaries now, or she's going to make your life hell when the baby arrives. You owe it to your wife to be firm and clear and stick to it. If your mother continues her behavior, tell her she will not be seeing her grandchild. Your marriage probably depends on it. Next story. I, 23 male, have been dating my boyfriend, 25 male, for about a year now. I only met his parents last week. For a while, he explained it with COVID concerns, but eventually he admitted he was putting off having me meet them because I'm Christian and they are, in his own words, militantly atheists. My boyfriend himself is agnostic, but he's curious about religion and likes to talk to me about it. I have no interest in converting him. For what it's worth, on my own understanding of Christianity, being a Christian is not required for getting into heaven, so I'm more concerned about the people around me being good people than I'm with whether or not they believe the same things I do. I'm obviously used to getting pushback about my faith from other gay folks, and I'm the first to admit they have reasons to feel how they feel about Christianity. So I told him it was fine, they weren't going to offend me, and I'd just avoid bringing up my faith at all. Why would I need to? Well, turns out my boyfriend had told them about it, and they brought it up. They asked me all sorts of questions I usually get. How can I be Christian knowing how Christianity has historically treated gay people? Do I have internalized homophobia? And so on. I thought it was pretty inappropriate coming from my boyfriend's parents, but I guess they're probably just looking out for him. Then they tried to explain to me why I'm Christian, and I briefly told them what my faith means to me. They were pretty quiet after that, and my boyfriend told me later they took it as me trying to convert them. But all I did was answer their question, didn't I? My boyfriend told me he believed I wasn't trying to do that, but that I did come off as defensive and maybe should have just changed the subject. Now I feel terrible. All I wanted was to make a good first impression. Am I actually the a-hole here? Edit. To reply to a question I've already gotten a few times. The gist of what I said is that I explained that Christianity helped me find myself when I was in a dark place as a teenager. What my relationship to Christ means to me. Tried to be clear about not belonging to any particular denomination and having a more esoteric approach to Christianity, rooted in mysticism, things like that. I didn't go into big detail about anything, and the whole explanation took maybe 5 minutes. Militantly anythingism is exhausting to be around. Bill Maher is as annoying to me as Joel Austin is. One of them just fleeces the sheep more. Chances are, there wouldn't have been a way you could have answered that question that would have satisfied them. If they didn't want an honest answer, they shouldn't have asked. As far as changing the subject, would they have let you? I think it's more likely that your answer was heartfelt, and they realized to continue the interrogation they would have to either start mocking you or couldn't find a leg to stand on. And I say this as an atheist myself. I have no interest in getting into religious debates with anybody. I only get mad when those beliefs get pushed on me or into politics. Otherwise, live and let live, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. People shouldn't ask questions if they don't want to hear the answers. You did nothing wrong. It's unfortunate, but honestly, it sounds like it was inevitable. Militant anything is bad in my opinion, and they were looking to find something to get in a snit about. Your boyfriend shouldn't put this on you. After all, he pretty much was worried about exactly what ended up happening, so should have been telling his parents to back off and not ask you any questions. This wasn't on you. Not the a-hole. They shouldn't have asked if they didn't want to hear the answer. I totally get why atheist parents in general, and especially parents of an LGBTQIA+ kid, would be concerned if their kid brought home an Abrahamic home. But as parents, their job is to love their kid and support them no matter who they decide to be with, as long as they're happy and healthy. Sounds like your boyfriend is happy and healthy with you, so his parents should accept that and accept you and just keep religion out of all discussions. Next story. I'll try to keep this simple. My in-laws are both far-right conspiracy theorists. My father-in-law is openly racist and regularly says anyone who disagrees with conservative ideas should be shot in the head. Anytime he gets mad, he curses at and tries to fight whoever he's mad at. He abused my fiance growing up, and he regularly tries to fight him drunk in front of our daughter. My mother-in-law is a boundary stomper extraordinaire and ignores everything I say to do or not do with my daughter. It's been going on for 3 years. A few months ago, my mother-in-law kept doing something I told her not to do with my daughter. I made the mistake of finally snapping at her to stop in front of my father-in-law, who called me many expletives. My mother-in-law stood behind him, smirking the entire time. Afterwards, I texted and explained, as a mother, I have boundaries they are not respecting. My mother-in-law said she didn't do anything wrong and refused to apologize. We left their home. Father-in-law said never to come back. He called my fiance multiple times to call me an a-hole, a witch, a wall jumper. I'm Puerto Rican. My fiance always stopped talking whenever his dad started calling me names and waited until he changed the subject. My mother-in-law got mad after a few weeks and came to my house when I was sleeping to reprimand me for keeping the baby from her. I never fed into it. Slowly the drama died down and we've been back to their house maybe 2 or 3 times since. 2 weeks ago, I received a text from an unknown number of screenshots of a conversation with my father-in-law. The things he said were vile. He said my fiance must be screwing my mother for us to be living with her. My dad is disabled and she can't afford our generational family home without us, so we rent half the house to help her. He said he couldn't wait to get his hands on that witch. He said I was dumb coont, a loser, etc. That conversation was between him and one of my fiance's friends who had recently come to hang out with us. The conversation between him and my fiance was worse for me. He told his dad I didn't mean any of the boundaries I set, that I have fits of rage and he has to take care of me, that my family hates the baby and I was raised wrong. It hurt so much. I told him I was done. I texted my in-laws a long rant that ended with me saying if they showed up on our property, I would call the police. I'm done trying to be a part of their family and to leave the baby and I off of any family event invitations and that neither of us would be coming around anymore. Then I blocked their numbers. My fiance told me I can't keep the baby from them. And I responded by saying if he disagreed, they could see her when he sees her, on whichever day the court decides or his if he keeps asking me to include them in my life. He says I'm asking him to go against his family. I said he can have whatever relationship he wants with them. We are going to couples and individual therapy for both of us. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Save those messages, and if you do end up leaving him, show the courts. This is unacceptable. Your father-in-law threatened you, and your so-called man is too much of a damn sissy to stand up for you. Get rid of the whole damn family. I would not let these people within 30 feet of my kid. Who knows what kind of insane stunts they would try to pull to keep the child. This makes me so incredibly angry for you. I'm sorry. Not the a-hole. Your fiancé is so focused on his family that he's completely forgotten he's chosen to build one with you. Boundaries can be respected if you two work as a team. It sounds like he has no backbone with his family. I'm sorry it's come to this, but if it does go towards divorce, I hope you'll stick to your guns and keep primary custody. Not the a-hole, but you need to take that baby and freaking run. If your fiancé, hopefully ex, doesn't want to give you custody without a fight and consent to supervised visitation without his family around, then tell him you'll show the judge and courts the screenshots that you got. If that doesn't work, tell him you will share them on social media. Why in the sweet name of God you would be interested in being part of this frickin' family is beyond me. The only way you would be an a-hole is if you allowed that toxic, hateful, hurtful, insane family to be a part of your child's life, and that includes your fiancé. They are literal children. Your fiancé has to defend you against them. You may be the only sane person there. I don't know how he can educate your kid when he is a low-value man. What a spineless act for him to do. What if his behavior continues in the future and does not defend you or your child? Do not put up with this. Set your boundaries. Next story. I'm in unfamiliar territory and would like outside opinions. I, 45 female, have a daughter, Lori, 21 female, with my ex, Tom. We broke up when I found out he was cheating, and the other woman, Jessica, 40 female, was pregnant with their son, TJ, 17 male. I was understandably bitter, but after a year, I finally put my big girl pants and agreed to a more healthy co-parenting relationship for Lori's sake. But I made it clear in no uncertain terms that I will ever be friends with Jessica and that Tom is never to contact me about anything that doesn't directly involve our daughter. I've always hated Jessica, and not because she was the other woman, but she constantly tried to undermine my parenting and kept trying to get Lori to call her mom. She was a classic mean girl who always liked to start crap when no one else was around and then play victim when I voiced my frustrations. I made no attempts to hide my pleasure when Tom returned to his old ways and left her for another woman. I guess seeing how awful she was during the divorce made Tom appreciate me even more because he finally gave me a proper apology, and while we would never restart a romantic relationship, we did have a semi-formal one rather than strictly business type. When Lori and TJ got a little older, Tom approached Jessica and I about taking the kids overseas, and I was fine with it. Jessica initially agreed, but the day of, she changed her mind and ruined the trip. Lori was heartbroken, but Tom and I made it up to her with a family trip to Hawaii. TJ wasn't allowed to come. TJ was really bummed out, but Tom promised him once he turned 18, they could have a one-on-one trip to another country. Unfortunately, Tom got sick and died. I was really heartbroken for the kids and tried to be there for Lori and didn't hesitate when she asked if TJ could join us for Thanksgiving. While she made it clear that it would just be TJ, I still prepared myself for Jessica and was relieved when she didn't show. TJ asked if he could spend the night, and I thought it was weird, but since he was 17, I figured he'd already checked with his mom. I was wrong. And heard TJ yelling on Lori's phone outside. Apparently, TJ ran away from home and Jessica doesn't know where he's at. I confronted him and TJ apologized for not being honest, but said that he hates his mom and stepfamily and that while he understands if I don't want him to stay, I can't make him go back. I asked him where he would go and he said that since he'll be 18 in January, he'll just stay wherever he can until then. While I'm encouraging him to stay with other relatives, I will not force him out as long as he abides by my rules. My sister thought I was crazy and reached out to Jessica, who is now harassing me into forcing TJ to come home. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Sorry, I accidentally put sister when I meant daughter because my daughter is TJ's sister. I'd have TJ contact the police or social services to update them on the situation. He's technically a child still, as someone else has pointed out. But if he's point blank refusing to go home, you're not the a-hole for harboring him, but it's potentially illegal. If you preempt this by contacting social services or the police, it can be agreed that your home is in his best interests. No one wants to see a teen running away if there's somewhere safe to stay. Not the a-hole. At 17, you can run away from home, at least where I live. Have TJ call the non-emergency police line and let them know he's done living with his mom because of the way she treats him, and he's safe. Literally Google your state and area for who you inform that he's not going back. In some places, it's CPS. In some, it can be a police non-emergency number. You can even get a police escort to get his paperwork like driver's license and birth certificate or have them mailed. I think you're not the a-hole, but you should really look into laws where you live because in plenty of places, it's a crime to shelter runaways. You won't be any help to him in a prison cell. Ask a lawyer what your options are. He will be 18 in January, but until then, you want to make sure you're in the clear. Also, make sure to keep your doors locked. Never know when Jessica will come banging on the door.